Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Corporate Vice President, Developer Division, Soma.
Good morning, everybody. It's great to have you all here today with us to be able to celebrate the release of the next version of developer tools and frameworks from Microsoft. I'm really excited to announce that Visual Studio 2015 and .NET 4.6 are available for you all to download today. Last November, we outlined a vision for how we want to expand the focus of Visual Studio to be relevant and provide a fantastic developer toolset for any developer working on any kind of application. And today, we are taking a huge step forward in that journey with the release of Visual Studio 2015 and .NET 4.6. Over the next couple of hours here, we are going to talk to you, but more importantly, show you some of the new capabilities, new features, new functionality that we are delivering in Visual Studio 2015 and .NET 4.6. And we also have a fun session planned for you where you'll get a chance to interact with some of the team members working on Visual Studio and have a sort of fun interactive Q&A session. When I talk about Visual Studio, the first thing that comes to people's minds is it's a full-fledged IDE, an integrated development environment, something that millions of developers from around the world have come to love and use day in and day out. But if you look at what we've been doing over the last several years, we've been steadily expanding the family of Visual Studio products. Visual Studio 2015 is absolutely one part of that family. But take last November, for example. We introduced a new member to the family of Visual Studio that we call Visual Studio Community Edition. Now, that's a full functional, full-featured Visual Studio product that we deliver for free for non-enterprise usage. Earlier this year, we announced Visual Studio Enterprise. Now, that's a product where you get all the functionality and value that you used to get in Visual Studio Ultimate, but at a much reduced price point. In addition to the IDE in Visual Studio, a few years ago, we decided to expand the family in terms of Visual Studio Online, which is a set of services that we deliver from the cloud for a variety of functionality that you care about in a DevOps sense. Whether you're thinking about version control, you're thinking about work item tracking, you're thinking about continuous integration, you're thinking about continuous deployment, you're thinking about instrumenting your application and getting insights and telemetry on how your application is behaving when it's deployed. The whole DevOps set of services that you care about, we are delivering that in Visual Studio Online. More recently, a couple months ago, at Build earlier this year, we unveiled the latest member of the Visual Studio family, which is Visual Studio Code. Now, think about this as a cross-platform development tool that runs on the Mac, runs on Linux, and runs on Windows that you can use to be able to build web and cloud applications. One thing when I talk about or think about the family of Visual Studio products, the thing that always comes to my mind first and foremost is the fantastic momentum that we are seeing among developers in terms of uptake, adoption, usage, and all that good stuff. Just to share some numbers with you in terms of momentum. In the 7 months or so since we launched the Community Edition, we've seen more than 5 million downloads of the Community Edition. That's a fantastic sort of testament to the power and value that developers see in Visual Studio. Today, we have more than 3.2 million registered users for Visual Studio Online. If you look at Visual Studio Code, where we delivered a preview about 2.5 months ago, in the 2.5 months since then, we've seen over 500,000 downloads of Visual Studio Code. These all sort of signify the continued phenomenal momentum that we are seeing for the Visual Studio tool set and the momentum behind the family of products here with developers around the world. And that's always exciting for me, personally speaking. One of the things that we've been talking about for the last several years now, and actually followed through on what we were saying, is how we want to get into a faster cadence where we can deliver value on a more ongoing, regular, frequent basis to our customers. You've seen us pretty much delivering every 3 to 4 months an update to Visual Studio for the last many years. In the last year, we've delivered 4 different updates for Visual Studio 2013. And the more important, at least from my perspective, news is 80% of our Visual Studio 2013 install base of customers are running the latest and greatest update. Along that journey, I'm excited to announce today that Update 5 for Visual Studio 2013 is available for you all to download and start using today. As much as we are on a faster cadence for Visual Studio, we are also doing something similar for Visual Studio Online and Visual Studio Code, where we are revving the service and the tool set every few weeks. And we are committed to continuing this continuous delivery mechanism as we move forward. Now, there's a lot of new functionality, new capabilities, a ton of new things that are coming in Visual Studio 2015 and .NET 4.6. What I thought we'll do over the next hour or hour and a half here is focus our conversation along 3 different dimensions. We are going to get a chance to show you some of the innovative, cool, new things that are coming in Visual Studio that is going to enable you to have a highly productive experience when you are sitting inside the IDE. And as you all know, as developers, we spend a lot of our time day in and day out inside the IDE, and we are committed to delivering the best productive experience when you are sitting inside Visual Studio. You heard us talk a lot about hey, we want to be more open. In the last year or 2, you've seen us starting to open source parts of our programming stacks. We've talked about how we want to enable you to be able to use other technologies, particularly open source technologies from within Visual Studio. We've talked to you about how we are going to give you the choice of being able to target your application to run on multiple different platforms. So this notion of openness is something you're going to hear a lot about today. And you're also going to see concrete things that we are delivering in Visual Studio 2015 and .NET 4.6 along that dimension. And finally, if you talk to a developer today or a development team today, most of the time the conversation is going to be around, hey, I want to be in a shorter innovation cycle. I want to have a faster cadence. I want to have an integrated DevOps cycle. I want to be in a build, measure, learn loop and have that be a tight iterative loop. So we are going to spend some time talking about how between Visual Studio Online and Team Foundation Server, we've got a comprehensive set of tools and services that enable you and your teams to be highly agile. So to show you some of the cool new innovative work that we are delivering in Visual Studio 2015 that's going to make you or give you a great productive experience inside Visual Studio, I thought I'll ask Beth Massey from the team here to come up on stage and show you some of the new things coming in Visual Studio 2015. Beth?
Thanks, Soma. So I'm first off going to start showing you some developer productivity features that we added in Visual Studio 2015, as well as some debugging and diagnostic tools that you're going to really make your life easier. So I've got this application I'm building here. It's a WPF app. First off, I want to mention that the XAML editor here is built from the ground up, and they've added some neat little features for us that really will help us navigate through some of our code. So we can just now right-click and go to peak definition. Don't even have to move around, go searching for files anymore. Right here, it's showing us the code behind, and also any linked resources, for instance. So you can just jump right in and easily navigate through your XAML. So that's pretty awesome. But I'm kind of more of a visual designer. When I'm doing things visually, I kind of want to do it visually and not necessarily have to mess around with the editor to do visual stuff. So I'm going to show you a new feature here that I personally like. Start up this application, and I'm going to move Visual Studio over to the side here so you can see this in action. There's these new live windows, okay? So I'm going to turn on this live visual tree and the live property editor. And so what this allows us to do is we can just take and find the element that we are interested in, click on it, and Visual Studio will let us open the file that is defined in, and then it'll let us test out some changes to the properties themselves. So let's go ahead and make this font size 90. And then in real time, we can see that change. So that's actually lots of productivity. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so there's a lot of productivity just around code itself. We write code, we're developers writing code all day. So let's go ahead and look at my view model here. So you'll see that first off, we got these sort of a heads-up display. It's called Code Lens. It gives us all this information about our code. In this case, some references, our team activity, the authors and the actual changes that were made. So that's pretty cool. It would also show any related work items, bugs, that sort of stuff. Now, we had this Code Lens in Visual Studio 2013 in Ultimate Edition. In 2015, it's part of Professional Edition and higher. So that's pretty awesome. So you notice the vehicles were kind of loading maybe a little bit slowly in this application. So I'm going to try and do a little bit performance diagnostics and debugging here. So I'm going to set a breakpoint here right in our get async. This is called out to the service. By the way, I should mention that the breakpoint settings can now be set directly here instead of bothering with modal windows. That's pretty cool. All right, so I'm going to set a breakpoint there and also set a breakpoint here. And let's fire off the call again just by hitting refresh. Okay, so I'm going to continue. All right, now you'll notice this perf tip here. It's telling me how many elapsed seconds have gone by, milliseconds, right? So how many times have we written code, like timer code, to time out your statements and stuff? No more. Just hit some breakpoints, set them, run Visual Studio. Visual Studio gives us this perf tip. Now what's cool is you can click on it, and it will zero in, it will filter right to that event right here in this diagnostic session that it's been doing. So we can really start digging into the memory usage and CPU usage and that sort of thing. We can take a snapshot, look at the heap, really start making some informed decisions about where we could optimize our performance, okay? So that's really helpful. The other thing we can do, let me just reset the view here. So now we'll see all the events that it's been tracking using IntelliTrace. We can go and we can activate historical debugging. And now you can use your locals, watch windows, that sort of thing to actually debug that point in time. So that's pretty awesome, I think, too. All right, so what about performance of our UI? A lot of times it's the UI, the rendering, that's actually the issue, not just the calls of the service and the code itself. So we've got a solution for that, too. Right in debug, start diagnostics without debugging. What we would do, I'm in debug mode right now, but what we normally would do is just set this to release mode, start the application timeline, CPU usage, GPU usage, whatever you want to start tracking, okay, profiling. Run your application scenario, click through it, do what a user would do, okay? Save the session. The session will save, and then we can analyze it. Now, I've already had one that I've done, so let me just open that one up. Okay, so we can take a look and really start to understand what's taking a while, like in our UI thread utilization, the throughput. We can look at the CPU usage here as well. What we can do is, let's say, sort by duration. What's taking a long time? Well, besides our startup, it looks like this layout event is also taking a little bit of long time. So we can filter to that time range. And now we can really start digging into the exact UI that's the culprit. Okay, so that's pretty cool, too. All right, so performance, we probably should go back to taking a little bit of look about what that service is returning, because I think maybe there's just too much data there or something. So let's go back over to the view model. You notice I'm still sitting in debug mode here. All right, what I want to do is I kind of want to understand the shape of this collection a little bit. I mean, you can drill into it. We could take a look at all the objects and that sort of thing. But what I really want to do is kind of I think we should filter this a little bit. Maybe I can select just some of the elements and just using lambdas, right? So let's go into the immediate window here. If we tried to use this before, it never worked before. And now we're actually providing lambda debugging. So that's pretty awesome. Also works in the watch video. All right, we'll do it in here too. Yes, it works also in the watch windows as well. All right, cool. Now, I kind of like that. I want to just basically, maybe we should just return the rating of the vehicles that are higher than 3. So I kind of dig that. So I'm going to just go ahead and do that. Oh, I don't want the select piece of it here. Yep, I'm editing right in debug mode here. I'm going to just go ahead and put this where clause in here. Continue. Hey, there we go. Okay. All right. That's cool. So that's great. We have all these profiling tools and debugging and that sort of thing in this version of VS. But what about like writing good code in the first place, right? What I want to do is I want to take a look at a class I've got here. I'm just going to uncomment it because the code actually won't compile. So right now, you'll notice that I'm implementing iSerializable, and I have a compiler error. You'll first notice that we have a new UI called light bulbs here that lets you preview the changes that is going to be made. Not only preview the changes for the document, but it could also apply these fixes across the solution or the project itself too. So that's pretty cool. You can preview the change. It will tell you all the files that it's going to make these changes. We can go ahead and apply. All right, so now it's compiling correctly, but anybody that's ever used a serializable class before will know that this actually won't work. And you new users to our framework might not understand how to actually get this class to work. So what we've done with a new Visual Basic and C# compiler called Roslyn is we've created a public set of APIs that you can use to create what's called analyzers. And these analyzers run live, real time, okay? So like FXCop, you used to be able to run this after the fact. These happen at the time we're actually writing code. All right, so let's go ahead and add one. We're gonna go up to NuGet, and I've got this one called Power Packs. It's called an Analyzer Power Pack that the team's released. We're going to go ahead and install that. Now, if I flip back over to our class and I look in this error list, you'll actually see a warning. Okay, I need to actually implement this attribute on the class. All right, so let's do that. Cool. Add the serializable attribute. Cool, I'm done, right? Now there's another one, really. Oh, okay. Oh, I don't have a serialization constructor? Okay, let's go ahead and add that too. So now you can see like library authors as well as team leads can create these analyzers to keep their team on the rails, to keep them so that they don't have to go look up documentation or find runtime errors in how to use the code itself. So I think that's pretty awesome. There are a number of analyzers on GitHub. The community has created some, and Roslyn itself is open source as well, so go check it out on GitHub. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Beth. That was awesome. What Beth got a chance to show you is just a little bit of or a little sliver of all the great things that are coming in Visual Studio 2015. Hopefully, you'll get a chance to download it and try it for yourself. I don't want to take a step back and talk to you about how we think about application development and what we think it means to developers. Now, you heard us talk about this consistently now, where we say that, hey, it's a cloud-first, mobile-first world. And when you look at that world through that lens, the one thing that jumps out at you is the fact that developers today want choice. On the client side or on the mobile side, they want a choice of being able to target any and all mobile platforms and mobile devices and mobile form factors that exist. On the back end, people want the choice of being able to run their applications in either a public cloud environment like Azure or in a private cloud environment. They want the choice of being able to run on either Windows Server or Linux. They also want the choice of what programming language and programming stack that they want to be able to use to build their applications and run their applications. So everywhere you look at, it's choice, choice, and more choice. And we have really internalized this as we built Visual Studio 2015 and .NET 4.6 to really give you, the developer, the choice that you want as you think about building modern applications in a cloud-first, device-first world. But before I go into the specifics, let me use this opportunity to talk to you about a particular customer. Now, the reason I get excited about this particular customer is because they sort of symbolize what it means for a customer to live in a world of devices and services. The particular customer in this case is somebody who's got over 450 million raving fans around the world. The business they happen to be is soccer. And the customer here is Real Madrid. I have a short video clip to show you what the customer is doing in terms of their journey towards devices and services. So can we roll the video, please?
We live in a world of mobile technology. But it is not the device that is mobile. It is you.
Real Madrid have about 450 million fans around the world. Before we used the Microsoft Cloud, the problem was that we were communicating with people, but in just one way.
This relationship is not a one-way relationship anymore, and we have to learn from them, because in the end, the cloud belongs to people.
Through Microsoft Cloud, we will be able to get intelligent information about their likes, about their preferences, about their choices, and we'll be able to address services and offers and communications to these fans.
We are talking about serving millions and millions of people outside the stadium.
When there is a game, when there is a training, when there is a goal, our duty is to bring that information as fast as possible to the people. We're trying to give them all the feeling of being at the stadium. The Microsoft Cloud gives us the scalability to communicate exactly the content that people want to see. Microsoft Cloud allows us to establish a relationship that is more personal, is more direct with the fans.
Now, the opportunities that we have in front of us in the infinite.
As you just saw in the video, Real Madrid is going through the transformation as we speak. But to help us get a little bit more insight into what Real Madrid is doing, I'm excited to have Rafael de los Santos, who's a new media director for Real Madrid, to be able to join us on Skype here. Rafael, thank you very much for joining us.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure for me to be with you today.
Rafael, I think, sometimes that I have a very cool job. I get a chance to build some great products that people around the world love and use. I get a chance to meet some fantastic customers around the world. But Real Madrid, you guys must be a league of your own. How's your experience working for Real Madrid?
Well, I must admit it's a great pleasure, but also it's a great responsibility. I get to work with my passion a little bit. I'm a football fan myself. I'm a Real Madrid fan. And knowing that we have 450 million fans around the world is always something that puts a little bit of pressure. But it's great. Every time I'm with my friends and we speak about jobs, mine is always on the top tier.
Right. The fact that you guys have more than 450 million raving fans around the world, and more importantly, you guys are the most successful sports club that exists in the world. Are your challenges any different than what you think other customers might be going through?
Not really. It's pretty much the same. It's about knowing your customer. In our case, our customer is our fan. So everything we build, everything we do is the intention and the final goal is to deliver what the customer is looking for. So that's pretty much like in any other company.
Got it. In terms of how you can better connect or engage with your fans around the world, how do you think about that? What are the key things that come to your mind around that?
Well, pretty much what we're doing now is that we're basing the development of our digital strategy in 3 pillars. One is knowing the customer, so that is the reason why we are building a digital platform that allows us to get information from the customer from every single point of contact that the customer, the fan in this case, have with us, whether it goes through the web, the app, the online store, any of the contact that he is maintaining with Real Madrid. The second thing is the platform that allows us to deliver the content. This is the video platform, the OTT that we're building, that will allow us to get the content to the fan in the way the fan wanted, regardless whether the fan is located in Spain or is located in Singapore or in South America, and regardless whether he is consuming this content through a surface or is doing it through a phone. And third, and this one is very important, finally, the app, which is basically, we think mobile is first, and the application is the key contact that we are using to engage with the fan at last.
Great. Rafael, one thing that would help me and help all of us here is to hear from you a little bit about how the Microsoft Developer Platform and the developer tools in Visual Studio on .NET and Visual Studio Online and Team Foundation Server, all of these things, how do they help you in terms of what you're trying to accomplish?
Well, the Microsoft platform has been very helpful in all this. Scalability is something that is key for us, and being agile is also key for our performance. So Azure is bringing a lot of value into this development. On top of Azure, we are also using other tools such as .NET and Visual Studio that is adding a lot of value to the full equation of what we're building. And last but not least, what we do with the application, we're using App Insight that is giving us a constant information about the user that allow us to improve and make our application better on a daily basis.
That's great to hear, Rafael. Thank you again very much for being here with us today. And oh, by the way, when you get a chance to meet with the team, can you just tell them a big hi from me? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me here. Thank you.
With Visual Studio 2015, we are delivering a great tool set that enables you to be able to build and deploy your applications to run on the cloud, whether you're thinking about a public cloud with Azure or whether you want to run it in a private cloud environment. We do enable you to be able to use any modern open web frameworks that you are excited about using. As I mentioned before, we do know that you want the choice of deciding what platform you want to be able to run your application on. As you know, Azure supports both Windows Server and Linux as first-class citizens. Now, if you're thinking about targeting Docker, we do enable you from within Visual Studio to be able to debug and deploy to a container either running on Windows or on Linux. Also, from a programming model perspective, we already talked about .NET going cross-platform, but if you want to use another programming model or programming technology like, say, Node.js or Python, we enable you to do that work from within Visual Studio as well. With Visual Studio 2015, we want to make sure that you have the opportunity to move to the cloud at a pace that works for you. Because we enable building hybrid applications, you may want to think about your own data center. You may want to think about a public cloud platform like Azure. You want to think about hey, how you can build an application and be able to take it back and forth depending on what your business needs are. Also, with Visual Studio 2013, you can develop, debug, diagnose, instrument, and get feedback on your application when it is deployed to the cloud, knowing that, again, that it can be a hybrid environment, and you get to pick and choose when you want to do and what you want to do. So net-net, with Visual Studio 2015 and .NET 4.6, we are delivering a fantastic set of tools for you to be able to build and deploy applications to the cloud. Now, to show you some of this in action, I want to ask Scott Hanselman to come up here and show some of this new stuff that is coming in these products. Thank you. The clicker is there.
Hi, friends. Thank you very much for that smattering of applause. So let's talk about what we're doing here today. We've got ASP.NET. ASP.NET 4.6 is happening. It is RTM. That is announced. .NET Framework 4.6 RTM. Visual Studio 2015 RTMing. And important to remember how much of this is open source. And we've got to feel really good about that accomplishment. There's so much going on in open source, and making that happen is really, really exciting. I'm going to show you a bunch of cool stuff that we're doing in the web right now with all of these products. So let's take a look at Visual Studio 2015. And right now I am inside of an ASP.NET 4.6 application, and I'm looking at some of the things that are going on around web forms developers. Web forms developers with .NET 4.6 have got a lot of cool stuff like asynchronous model binding, great support for Roslyn and C# 6-isms. We've even put in things like HTTP2. So for example, if I go and hit Control F5 and bring this up in Microsoft Edge and then hit the F12 tools, let's look at the network sniffer here, and you'll see that we're serving HTTP2 when appropriate from our ASP.NET application, this web forms app. And then We can even do things like low-level push promises around HTTP2. So you've got a lot of control there. On the MVC side of 4.6, we've added in Roslyn support. So you can see that we're doing things like null conditional operators. We've got conditional catch. This is hot. I like being able to do this. So I can say try catch when a particular thing is the case. And then things like auto properties and getter only properties. All of that happening today. You get that in web forms. You get that in MVC. Everyone who's doing stuff with ASP.NET 4.6 gets to use C#6 and Roslyn in production. It's happening. One of the other things worth pointing out is that you've got rich support in the tooling for HTML5, CSS3, and JavaScript, and that also works for everyone as well. So web forms doing HTML5, MVC doing HTML5. Here I've loaded up a partial in Razor, and let's go ahead and just zoom in on this particular element. I can go and get ARIA support. You notice how I'm getting nice IntelliSense data hyphen. You see that ... there? We've actually realized that IntelliSense is so important, but also sometimes overwhelming. So for example, if I'm doing Angular, you see ng ... So we've got two-layer IntelliSense and support for Angular and the kind of rich modern web applications that you're using every day. And that list goes on and on, making it easier for you to get the stuff done that you want to get done. So another thing that we're doing is trying to enable people who are using modern web technologies to have a great experience on ASP.NET. So if you're doing work, whether it be in web forms or ASP.NET, you might use tools like Gulp or Grunt or JSLint to look at your JavaScript. I've got some JavaScript here, and I'll actually insert a couple of mistakes here accidentally. And I might want that to be linted or run JSHint as part of the build. Well, the Task Runner Explorer allows me to connect tasks within my Gulp file to build events in Visual Studio. So I can go and run JSHint, and you see Visual Studio is running that, and it's found those syntax errors. So I've got the modern tools that open source developers use for front-end web development integrated in with Visual Studio. So I'll go and save that file, rerun that, and I've got no errors. In ASP.NET 5, which is not yet RTMing, but still included as a beta in Visual Studio 2015, we've got some exciting things to show you. Like, for example, here, this home controller in this MVC application, you notice it says public class controller, but it doesn't actually derive from anything. It doesn't implement anything. These are controllerless controllers. I've actually got a plain old CLR object, a POCO object, that is itself a controller, simply because it ends in the name controller. This gives people a lot more flexibility without having to be bound to a particular base class or an interface. So that is a nice feature of MVC. Additionally, MVC and Web API have been merged such that an MVC controller and a Web API controller are the same thing. That's built. See, that kind of stuff, it matters. It matters. Notice also that there's no default constructor here. We've got iCarrier repository being passed in. There's no default constructor. How does this get made? How does that dependency get met? Well, dependency injection built in, baked in by default in ASP.NET 5. So iCarrier repository is part of a scoped dependency. And you can see all of my dependencies being put into one location here. So you can use our IOC container right out of the box, or you can plug in a popular open source tool like AutoFac if you like. It's all about choice, and it's all about pluggability. And you're going to get that out of the box with File New Project with ASP.NET 5. In the theme of choice, there is a lot of composability going on. If you don't like something, you swap it out. If you don't opt into something, you don't get it. And I'll give you an extreme example. If we go and look at the new NuGet dialog box, that's actually modeless now, so you don't have to have that pop up and hold there. It's just another tab in Visual Studio. One of the things we have installed is the ability to serve static files. That might seem like a silly thing, but you want to be able to swap out pieces that you don't necessarily want. So if I go and hit uninstall you'll notice over here on the right-hand side, it's going to be synchronized. I hit uninstall, I hit OK, and now this says restoring, and now it's disappeared from that right-hand side. So I have literally removed the ability of ASP.NET to serve static files. This means that every little small aspect of things is completely pluggable. If you wanted to change the yellow screen of death to make it look like something else, you have the ability to do that. Aspects of ASP.NET that were never swappable before are now swappable. You can make those changes at the command line. You can make them in a text editor. You can make them in Visual Studio. You notice right there, I just brought it back, and it's automatically synchronized. So that's hot, too. One of the other things in the discussion around choice that we want people to have is the ability to deploy ASP.NET anywhere. And that means not just Windows, not just Azure, where it's going to work best, but also to Mac, Linux, but maybe a Docker container. And that's what the .NET Core framework is all about. I want to be able to, say, right-click and hit Publish and see choice. So here are some of the choices that you see in Visual Studio when you say Publish. Yes, publish to Azure Web Apps, but you notice here with the coming soon Docker extension to Visual Studio, the ability to go directly to a Docker container in a Docker virtual machine. I could go and put this on a file system. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to take this USB key here and I'm going to publish out to this file system. And then we're going to take that and put it on another machine. So I'm going to start that publish now. And then while that's going on, let's switch over to the slides here and just get a sense of what's going on. .NET Core 5 runs on Windows, Linux, and Mac, which means that I could be a Windows developer using Visual Studio, having a great experience writing ASP.NET, or I could take that application, run it on Linux, run it in Docker, develop on a Mac. I've got choice at every step of the way. Let's switch back over here. I'm going to take this USB key out of this PC. I'm going to switch over to this Mac. And I'm going to plug that in. This is OS X here. We're going to connect this disk to the Mac. And I'm going to open up a new terminal. And we'll go over to the Mac. So I am on the USB key now. We have not copied anything local here. And I'm going to go and I can use Visual Studio Code if I wanted to, and I can edit these. I can get IntelliSense, but what I'm going to do is actually just run this. I'm going to say DNX using the .NET execution environment, taking the project that I was just working on my PC and start it up on my Mac. I'm going to bring up Safari, and I'm going to hit localhost because I'm running that. There you go. So there is my ASP.NET 5 app running on .NET Core 5 on this Mac, and that's pretty hot. But wait. While I appreciate your applause, I think, though, that seeing the same exact thing and Visual Studio Code running in Ubuntu is also equally cool and deserving of applause. So ASP.NET 4.6, RTMing today, included in Visual Studio 2015, open source. ASP.NET 5, coming soon. There's a beta in the box. We'll have an update on the web dev blog about the exact schedule around the release of ASP.NET 5. And you've seen ASP.NET 5 running on both the framework 4.6 and, in this case, .NET Core 5 on Mac, on Linux. Visual Studio 2015 is giving us the promise of any app, any developer, any platform. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott. That was great, man. That was great. Thank you. Now, switching focus and talking about the client side or the mobile development, the first thing that I want to say is every client experience or every client application that gets built today starts with the mobile-first worldview. Developers think about it that way. And with Visual Studio 2015, we are delivering a comprehensive set of cross-platform mobile tools for you to be able to build great mobile applications and great mobile experiences. Now, one of the things that developers always think about is, hey, how do I build my application in a way that I get the broadest reach possible? And if you want to have the broadest reach possible, one simple way to do that is to be able to build modern, responsive web applications, browser-based applications using HTML5, JavaScript, CSS, and the like. And in Visual Studio 2015, we got a great tool set to enable you to do just that. Now, on the other hand, if you want to be able to build an application that looks like and feels like a native device application, and you still want to use web technology, standards web technologies, you can do that with Visual Studio 2015, taking advantage of the underlying Apache Cordova platform. We work very closely with the Apache Cordova Foundation to make sure that we got great tools that you can use to build applications that run natively on devices. Now, if you're a .NET kind of person, particularly if you're excited about the richness, the power, the productivity that you see in .NET, and you want to use .NET, you can do that and be able to build universal Windows applications targeted at the entire ecosystem of Windows devices, starting from the desktop to mobile devices and to some of the newer form factors, including HoloLens. Now, if you want to take your .NET application and extend its reach to other platforms, including iOS and Android, between what we are delivering in Visual Studio on .NET and what you get with Xamarin, you have everything that you need to be able to build applications, not just for the Windows platform, but also to extend the reach of your .NET application to iOS and Android. So net-net, Visual Studio 2015 gives you a comprehensive set of tools for you to be able to build cross-platform mobile applications. Now, to show you a little bit of how these tools work in Visual Studio 2015, let me ask Amanda to come up here. Amanda? Thank you very much.
Hi, everybody. So what I'm going to show you guys today is two mobile applications. And the scenario is you want to make a reservation on a shuttle booking service for a business. There are two applications I'm going to show you. The first one will be targeted at consumers who are basically booking a shuttle. And the second app is going to be targeted at the drivers of the shuttle service who want to see what kinds of reservations are being made on the shuttle service. As you see, I have the application running across all three of these different devices. I have a Windows device, an Android device, and an iOS device. And as you can see, the user experience for each one of the apps for the consumer-facing app is native to the device. So the experience in the Windows device is that I have a pivot control to transition between screens, and the transitions kind of come in from the side. On the Android device, we have the navigation happening along the top, and you can see that the transitions kind of pop in from the bottom. And on the iOS device, you can see that the navigation happens along the bottom, and that the transitions kind of come in from the side. But each one of these really delivers a native look and feel and experience for each one of the devices. So now what I'm going to do is show you guys the other application, which is the drivers application. So let's just switch to that for each one of the devices. And as you can see here, the experience is pretty much the same across all of the devices. Now, one of the reasons why I would want a native experience for a consumer-facing app is that I'm competing with other apps in the App Store, and so I really need to make sure that I'm delivering the very best, richest experience. But for the driver application, I want to keep costs down in terms of training materials and support. And so I actually want to deliver the same exact experience across the three different devices. Now I'm going to switch back here and just go back to the consumer app, and I'm going to make a request for a ride. Now you can see that the vehicle has been requested, and we get a push notification happening on the driver app for the Android device. So now let's jump into Visual Studio to show you guys how this works. So I'm going to start with the driver application here and show you guys how we build this app using Apache Cordova. Now, Apache Cordova basically uses web technologies, JavaScript, HTML, and CSS, to create a mobile application. And to get you started, you can go to Create New Project. And we've been working with folks in the community to make sure that we have great starter templates to ensure that you can create applications that have a great look and feel. So some of the most popular UI frameworks in the Cordova community are Ionic and Onsen. And so as you can see, I can just kind of mouse over some of these, and you can see some of the different types of templates that are available to you, for you to use. Now, if I go back to the My Shuttle application for the driver app, you can see that we have the Apache Cordova project already loaded. And one of the things that we've changed as we've been developing the Visual Studio 2015 release is we've moved to a file-based project system. Now, this really allows you to have great interoperability with common command line interop and other kinds of tools in common web workflows. So if we look at the dependencies list, you can actually see that my Bower scripts are here to basically take dependencies on common web frameworks. And as you can see here, we're using Angular, we're using Bootstrap, and even Bootstrap has a dependency on jQuery. So that's pretty awesome. Now, this project is actually written in TypeScript. TypeScript is a programming language that we've created as an extension to JavaScript. It provides strong typing so that you get the same productivity that you get from C# in terms of IntelliSense, statement completion, and navigation, but for JavaScript. So what you can see is we've also been working with the Angular community to ensure that we have great IntelliSense for Angular. So if you see that I go scope, and then I look at something like start ride location or something like that, you can actually see that I get fairly rich experience for what that IntelliSense kind of looks like. The next thing you can see is I can just go ahead and do something like peak definition, and you can see that automatically pop up. Now try that in a JavaScript editor. You really can't get that. It's pretty awesome. So now the next thing I'm going to show you is to go into NPM, and you can see that in addition to using common web frameworks to create my Cordova application, I can also use common tools and preprocessors and task runners. So as you can see here, I'm using Gulp, I'm using Bower, etc. And all of this is hooked into the task runner that Scott showed you guys earlier. So now I can go into www.css, and you see that I have main CSS and the less version. Now I can just go ahead and clean that less, and you can see that the CSS file is automatically deleted. Now this is the benefit of having a file system-based project system. So what makes this different from creating a web application is basically what you can see in the config.xml file. Now this is basically a designer on top of the XML file, but what this provides is an application wrapper that allows you to specify various kinds of details for your mobile application. Now, in addition to that, what a mobile application allows you to do is to access the native device capabilities. And in Apache Cordova, that's done via plugins. So as you can see here, we have support for all of the plugins that are commonly used in the community. But in addition to the ones that are commonly defined in the community, you can also define your own custom plugins. And I can reference something that's local on my machine or on a common file share, or I can use a Git location. Now, in this case, we have Application Insights plugin that we've defined, and I can just go ahead and copy that and plug this in here. And you can see that it automatically shows up, and I can add that plugin into my project. Now, I've already installed this plugin along with a number of other plugins. So the next thing I'm going to do is show you guys a little bit of the debugging experience. So since we announced last fall, we've added a Visual Studio emulator for Android, which I have running right here. And as this is building and deploying the application, I want to show you guys a few additions that we've made to the emulator in the meantime. So if I bring this up, you can actually see that we have a bunch of different new features for the emulator, including things like location paths. I can actually specify the GPS location for my device so that I can actually simulate the experience of traversing a particular path along a map. Now, after we have started this application, we can see that Visual Studio starts in a debug mode. And I can go to the debug windows and open the DOM Explorer. Now let's just minimize this so I can see the emulator side by side. and I can use the select element to select this element right here. Now let's just close those additional tools so we can see it side by side. Now that I've selected this, I'm just going to change this to be purple so that you can see it. And then I'm going to change what it says by editing as HTML, and I'll say no rides. And you can see that that automatically updates. So that's pretty cool. You get a very, very live experience for interacting with the application. So now I'm just going to close this emulator and stop debugging, maximize this. And this time I'm going to deploy to an iOS device. So I'm going to deploy to a remote device. Now what this is doing is it's actually connecting to a OS X box that I actually have right here underneath this stage. And it's basically packaging up the application, sending it to that remote build agent, and then deploying it to this device. If we go to the output window, we can see it progressing. So it's actually uploading the build request payload to that OS X device. So now we can see that the application has actually been deployed. Visual Studio gets started in the debug mode again. And if I go ahead and click Start Service and click Start, then we will actually hit that breakpoint. And as you can see in the locals window, I can open this and I can look at all of the things that are defined on this or on the scope or things like that. And I also get a complete call stack. So that's pretty awesome. I get the great live debugging experience against either an emulator that's running locally on my machine or on a tethered device that's either an Android or an iOS device. OK, so now let's jump to how we build the consumer application using Visual Studio and Xamarin. What you see here on my screen is how we build the native applications. Now, for the native applications, the important thing is that almost all of the code can be shared across all three of the different device targets that I've created. Now, if I expand this portable class library that I've defined, you can see that it's not just the core base logic of the application, core business logic of the application, but it's also service agents and view models. So I can even look at this vehicle detail view model. And this is using a fairly common .NET MVVM cross framework that I'm using right here. And as you can see, if I just go ahead and right-click and look at the properties, you can see that I can define this DLL so that it can run across Windows Phone, Xamarin, iOS, and Android. So next thing I'm going to do is show you guys the Windows versions of the applications. Now, when I showed this last fall, one of the things that we had was I could build the Windows application for Windows 8.1 and Windows Phone 8.1, and I used the shared project to define a whole lot of common code that I could rerun across each one of those devices, including things like views if I had some shared XAML that I wanted to run across each of those devices. With Windows 10, I can actually create the same application across the different devices, if that's a phone or if that's a tablet or even if that's a PC desktop application. So what I can show you guys here is the map page for my app. And as you can see, this is the XAML file kind of rendered in the 12-inch tablet mode. But if I just go ahead and change this to a 6-inch phone, we can see that it resizes and it shows you what the layout would look like there. Now, I've already pre-deployed it to the local simulator and the local emulator. And so this is basically a phone instance of Windows 10, and this is the tablet instance of Windows 10. And as you can see here, I can see all of the map information. I can see each one of the different vehicles that I have, and I can see the rides. And on the phone, if I look at vehicles by distance and by price, I can see the list, but I also have the rides. So we're actually using a flow layout here to change the view for each one of the different target devices. So that's how you would build for Windows 10. Now, moving along, I might want to take that same portable class library and all of the business logic behind my application and build an iOS or an Android app. So let's jump to the Android application. And as you see here, it's defined here. And in the main view of this Android application, I can go ahead and just show you guys that I get some great Android-specific IntelliSense with the Xamarin extension. So I can do something like hardware and then look at something like the geomagnetic field. Obviously, that is a native device capability. The next thing I'm going to do is show you guys that with Visual Studio and the Xamarin extension, you also get a great designer experience for each one of the native UI frameworks. So as you see here, I have the Android experience showing here, but I can also switch this from a Nexus 5 to a Nexus 4, and you can see that the layout slightly changes for each one of those devices. And then on the iOS device, we have the same type of a view so that I can do WYSIWYG type of designing experiences for that screen. But I can also zoom out. And as you can see here, we have a full storyboard designer for the iOS version of the application. Now, one of the newest things that I'm going to show you guys here today is that Xamarin has added support for new types of devices. So if you noticed a little bit earlier, we also have this wearables folder. So you can see that they have support for the Android Watch and the Apple Watch. And as I can show you guys here, we also have a storyboard designer for the Apple Watch. So I've been working on a little bit of an enhancement to this application. And if we jump to another instance of Visual Studio, I have an instance that's using cross-platform C++, which is also a new addition to Visual Studio 2015, so that I can build core components. Maybe they're authored in OpenGL or other types of things that can be deployed across each one of the different device targets. So in this case, we are using OpenGL. And I've already deployed it to this Android emulator. And what you'll see here is that if I pick this and then I request the car, you can see that I have an OpenGL little splash screen as the vehicle has been requested. What I really wanted to show you guys here is that the emulator actually supports OpenGL rendering as well. Now, we've talked to a lot of mobile developers, and we've certainly heard that an Android emulator is a welcome addition to the community, and this actually is included in Visual Studio community. In addition to that, one of the things that I'm very excited to announce today is that we are making the Android emulator available as a standalone portion of Visual Studio. I don't necessarily have to open it in the context of Visual Studio to be able to use it. So even if I'm using a different tool, I can actually use this same Android emulator. And as you see here, I have a shortcut to that, and I can just go ahead and open it. And you can see I can create various configurations for each one of the different types of devices that I want to be able to emulate. And we also have support for Lollipop API version 22. So that we're kind of keeping up to date with the latest versions of Android. So thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you, Amanda. It was great. Thank you. Over the last 45 minutes or so, we sort of spent a lot of time talking about the what in Visual Studio. In other words, hey, what kind of applications you can build, whether you're targeting the cloud or whether you're targeting mobile devices. We talked a lot about some of the new things coming in Visual Studio 2015. Now what I want to do is switch focus and talk a little bit about the how. Every developer, every development team is wanting to live in this sort of modern world where development and operations come together in an integrated way. They want to be able to have shorter innovation cycle, go to market fast, be able to get feedback, and have this continuous development, delivery, feedback mechanism in place where they can sort of iterate in a fast way. With Team Foundation Server 2015 and Visual Studio Online, we got a compelling set of DevOps services for you and your teams to be able to operate in a highly agile way. Now, to drill into some of the specifics of what we are delivering with Team Foundation Server 2015 and Visual Studio Online, I want to ask Brian Harry to come up here and share with you and show you some of the new stuff that's coming in. But before I do that, there is one more customer story I thought I would share with you. Now, this is a customer that is a little bit near and dear to not just my heart, but hopefully to all of your hearts as well. And the customer in this particular case is the Visual Studio team itself. As much as we talk about DevOps, faster innovation cycle, continuous delivery, continuous integration, continuous feedback, we operate that way inside the Visual Studio team as well. So here is a short video clip for you that sort of gives you a little bit sneak peek into the development and what happens inside the Visual Studio team. Can we roll the video, please? Visual Studio started in 1996 as a way to bring all of our development tools into a single integrated development environment. You fast forward to today, Visual Studio has grown significantly, whereby today we have millions of developers around the world using Visual Studio day in and day out.
Now we're using the DevOps methodology to build the entire product.
Making it much faster for developers to get their hands on products, usually even quarters, and now even moving to a month-to-month cadence where you get real-time feedback and you get to change the direction of the product much faster than you would have before.
We completely reorganized the way the team works. We moved everybody into team rooms of 10 to 12 people, all focused around solving a problem.
Our approach really focused a lot on ensuring the teams had full end-to-end responsibility for what they were working on.
They own their own backlogs, they own the engineering of their features, and then they ultimately own delivery of those features, and they own it in production as well.
That means that there's a lot more accountability and responsibility and pride in what we're creating.
We've made all these changes to help our customers build innovative software. We're taking their feedback, we're adding it into the product, and then we're giving them the tools they need so they can build great software.
It's really about continuous development, continuous integration, continuous deployment, and continuous feedback. And we're taking both the quantitative data and the qualitative data together to really understand what the customer experience really is.
Understanding who your customer is, understanding what problems they have, and how you're going to help them solve them, and then following the product all the way through into the customer and making sure that it in fact does solve their problems.
By open sourcing .NET, we really wanted to accelerate the ecosystem around .NET.
And now, our entire product from start to finish is actually developed completely in the open on GitHub. As you're checking in code, that code is being checked in publicly. People can actually see our check-ins every day, so you can actually see our progress in real time.
That kind of changes the entire culture. You realize there is a large and vibrant ecosystem that wants to work with you and collaborate on code.
Hack culture is changing the way we build our software from the ground up.
If we want to build the best product, we have to be the customer. We have to be the person that's using the product. And what better way to actually do that than use Visual Studio to build applications?
Now it's really about how quickly can we learn, and sometimes that means failing fast and not being afraid to try something, realize it isn't actually what you intended for it to do, and change course really quickly.
One of the coolest things we've done at Microsoft is provided hackathons, both across the company and within the developer division.
Anybody that wants to try an idea can now try an idea.
Visual Studio 2015 is a fantastic release. Download it, start using it, give us feedback, and more importantly, get involved.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Corporate Vice President Brian Harry.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. So I'm going to spend a few minutes today talking to you about how the work we've done in Visual Studio 2015 and Team Foundation Server 2015 can help you adopt Agile and DevOps practices. As I look at it, as engineers and development teams, we kind of all have the same problems. Our customers and stakeholders want more from us. They want it faster. They want it higher quality. They want it on more platforms. And technology is changing crazy fast. I mean, every month there's a new framework, there's a new tool, there's a new process, and we're constantly learning. We're always crazy busy, and we always feel behind. So how do we cope with this? How as developers do we deal with this craziness in our lives? And it's pretty simple. We just try to keep getting better. We try to figure out how to do more, how to do it more efficiently, eliminate waste. Just every day is about learning how to do it better. And Agile has been a big change in the development community over the last 10 to 15 years. And the latest wave of change in the development process and practice is sort of called DevOps. Now DevOps means different things to different people. It's kind of the term is still nascent, but and different people practice it different ways. But there's some commonality, and there's a set of practices that pretty much everybody thinks of as part of DevOps. And sort of continuous delivery, that is the process of delivering software constantly, regularly, whether it's every check-in or it's every week or it's every month, this process of delivering software in smaller chunks and more rapidly to our customers. Continuous monitoring, so if I'm going to be delivering this stuff very, very fast to my customer, I've got to be able to monitor that stuff. I've got to understand what's happening in my production environment and be able to respond quickly. And then lastly, continuous learning. And that is, so I'm delivering all this stuff. Is anything getting better? And if I decide to make a change, did that change actually help? Did it make it worse? And so continuous learning is all about figuring out how to evaluate the success or failure of the changes that we're making. So these are some of the key evolving practices in the industry. And our solution to help you with these is Team Foundation Server and Visual Studio Online. They provide a full set of lifecycle management solutions, from source control and planning to testing to build automation, release management, you name it. Now, it's been well known and well recognized as a great tool for .NET developers. But over the last couple years, we've been working really, really hard to make Team Foundation Server and Visual Studio Online a great solution for any kind of code, any platform, any code you're working on, whether it's Java or it's Node or it's iOS or it's Android. We've been really working hard to make it work and be great for all kinds of development. So together with Team Foundation Server and Visual Studio Online, Visual Studio Enterprise Edition brings you a comprehensive set of tooling that helps you with your Agile and DevOps practices. With things like Agile Planning for helping you with your planning and team collaboration processes, to testing features like IntelliTrace and IntelliTest to help you test better, to features like release management and deployment automation to help you deliver software into production more quickly and more reliably. So I'm going to spend the rest of my time doing demos. And so this is sort of a framing. I'm going to talk about it in sort of 4 sections. Planning, how the work we've been doing over the last year or so with our Agile tooling is making Agile planning a lot better. Development and test, release management and deployment automation, and then monitor and learn, which is telemetry and sort of feedback analysis. So let's start with planning. So planning is everything that starts with, let me decide what I'm going to build, to figuring out how I'm going to organize my teams to go do it, to let me track the work and collaborate among all the players as I go. So let's go to a demo. We've had Agile planning tools for a good long time in TFS and in Visual Studio Online. But over the last year, we've focused on just making them better, making them lighter weight, making them more flexible, simpler. And I want to show you some of what we've done there. So this should look familiar if you've ever used Team Foundation Server. We have a backlog. Backlogs can be hierarchical. So when I get bigger organizations, I get more than one team working together, you kind of need to be able to break your backlog down. And TFS and Visual Studio Online allow you to configure how many layers of the backlog you want. So I've started with a simple backlog, and then I can just expand it out down the levels of hierarchy. Now, what's new about this is it used to be, if I wanted to modify my backlog, I always had to go to the flat list and modify. I could visualize it in the tree. We fixed it so that now you can do everything in the tree. So if I just want to come in here and add a new task, I can say a new task. That shows up immediately where I put it. If I want to reprioritize it, I can prioritize it above that. If I want to move it to, to another backlog item, I can rearrange it here. All super simple. Now, another thing that's important as we start to get to these hierarchies and multiple teams is you have dependencies between teams. I'm doing work that other teams are contributing to, and you kind of want to be able to focus on the work your team is doing, but you need to be aware of the work other teams are doing. So if I look over at another team, this is the backlog of the MyShuttle Ops team, and I see their backlog, and that's all good. This is all work assigned to the Ops team. But I'd like to look at that in the context of the rest of the work. So I'm going to turn parents on. That's going to kind of look up the hierarchy and show all of the things that my work is parented to or related to. And you'll see new items showed up in here, and some of them are hollow. Some of these little ticks are hollow. And that means that's work assigned to somebody else, but that my work is related to. Now, I don't get to change those or reprioritize those because they're on somebody else's backlog, but I can move around all of my work that's related to those things. So super handy, flexible ways to do that. Now, that's cool for the backlog, but increasingly what we're finding is people like visual ways of managing their work. And the backlog is good, and it's a great way to manage my list and prioritize it, but people like boards. People like the ability to visually see what they're doing. So we have a Kanban board, and the Kanban board continues to get better. The first thing, I'll sort of make it full screen so we can see the whole thing. One thing we did is we added the backlog to the Kanban board so that I can, add new items directly onto my Kanban board as I go. That's cool. And I used to have to, or until TFS 2015, if I wanted to modify this item, I would have to click it. It would bring up the work item form, and it was this very in and out experience. So we've added the ability to modify the card directly. So let's say I want to assign that to Adam. I don't like the title that I put there, so I'll call it a better item. Sort of a nice way to be able to just edit it directly. Now, I'd like to be able to customize my cards as well, because I've got some custom fields that I want to be able to represent on my card. So I'll go over here and to my settings, cards, and we use tags. Team Foundation Server has tags to be able to put these simple, lightweight categorizations on my work items. And I'd like to show those tags on my cards. We also use area path in order to, as another taxonomy, another way to categorize our work and divide it up among teams. So I want to add that to my card. So I do that, and now they're here. And in fact, they're editable on the card, just like all the other fields. So super easy to build a board that looks just like I want and has the data on it that I want. Now, a Kanban board, sort of the structure of a Kanban board is it's a view of work as it progresses through stages. So each column, I've got a new column, a development column, approved, ready, and done. Okay? And as work completes, it moves across the board. But in Kanban, it's supposed to be a pull process. So it's not like I get done with it and I push it on to the next guy. It's rather I get done with it, I mark it as ready, and the next guy pulls it when he's ready. Okay? And in order to do that, I need the ability to sort of, in a given stage, say approved, I need the ability to differentiate between work that's in progress versus work that's finished and ready to be pulled. And so we've added this hierarchical columns capability to have doing and done subcolumns for any given column that you have. Further, I can, just like I can customize the card, I can customize the columns. I can add new columns, so, I can decide whether I want that split or not. I can also create what are called definitions of done. And a definition of done is sort of a communication to the team that says, for work in this part of the process to be considered complete, here are the set of checklists. Here's the things you have to do in order to call it done. So this is a nice, simple markdown editor that allows me to define definition of done for each column. And if I go back, we can see that right here, and the definition of done for the approved column is right here. And I can see the definition of done for the ready column here with some nice rich formatting based on Markdown. Now, the next thing in Kanban is, okay, I've got this bunch of work that I'm managing through this process from beginning to end. But sometimes I'll have different categories. And the most common that I see is what's called, in Kanban, the term is expedited work. And that is, it's sort of emergency work or break fix work. I've got something that needs to get done really fast, and it can't sort of just wait for somebody to pick it up out of the long list of stuff that's there. So Kanban has a notion called swim lanes, and a swim lane is a section of work. Here I've got two. I've got development and operations. And so let's say I want to just add another swim lane. So I will add an expedite swim lane. And take, my new item and put it over in expedite, and then as that work gets done, it moves through, and I can track that set of work independently of the broader set of work. So a bunch of options to make it simpler, more flexible, and work the way that you want to work. Now, sort of one last thing I want to talk about with respect to working the way you work is let's say there's a religious debate among people how bugs should be thought of in the development process. Should they be thought of backlog items that are scheduled at the beginning of a sprint? Should they be thought of tasks that are associated with a backlog item? Should they not be on the backlog at all, and they should just be treated as part of the normal work process? We stay out of that debate. We've recently added an ability for you to decide. So now we have three options. If you go to our config UI for our boards, you can decide that either bugs appear on backlogs, or bugs appear as tasks on backlogs, or bugs do not appear on backlogs. So you get to choose how you want to do that. All right, so that covers some of the improvements that we've made in our agile planning stuff, making it more flexible and just easier to use. So I'm going to move on and talk a bit about the development and test area and the release area. So development and test is sort of everything that has to do with writing the code and getting it to quality, and that sort of dev inner loop of build it, test it, and check it in. Release management is kind of the outer loop that covers the process of taking code from the developer desktop into some kind of production environment. Usually through a set of stages. You might have it as simple as a continuous deployment directly to an environment, or you might have it go to some kind of a testing environment, and then an integration environment, and then a pre-production environment, and ultimately into production. However sophisticated your process is, sort of the release process is that management of that workflow. So I'm going to demo some of the work that we've done in this area as well. Let's start. I want to start with pull requests. Okay, an important part of the process of adopting DevOps. If you're going to get into an agile, iterative, rapid code flow experience, you've got to push quality very early in the process. You've got to fix the bugs before they ever make it in. You can't be finding them, in integration testing. You've got to find them in the very beginning, and a very valuable practice to help you do that is code reviews. They have a lot of benefits. Helps you create better code, helps you better educate new members to the team, helps you better identify opportunities for sharing and common patterns, etc. It's a great practice. So what I'm going to demo for you is our Git code review experience that we call pull requests. So if I go into the code tab and look at the pull requests, I'll see that I have 2 pull requests assigned to me. So these are, somebody has asked me to do code reviews, and I have 2 of them. So I'll pick one of them. And immediately, I can see the state of that pull request. I can see everything that's been done to it. I can see people who have commented on the code and reply to those comments, etc. I can also quickly switch over to the files and see and comment on the files myself. So for example, this, I'll say, don't hard code constants. And when I'm done, I can mark this, for example, as approved with suggestions, saying I like it, but I think you need to make a few changes. That's all good. It's a great code review, collaborative experience. But in order to sort of control the quality of code, you sometimes want to be able to put gates in place that say, hey, I want to make sure you do a code review, or I want to make sure certain things happen before that code gets into the release branch. So we've introduced another new capability that we call branch policies. And one of those branch policies is a code review requirement. So I can, for example, say every push to this branch requires a code review. I might also say, for instance, that, by the way, if it happens to be the iOS code, then I really want to make sure Adam reviews it. So I can make sure specific people review parts of the code. And then lastly, I might want to make sure before it gets into the branch that it builds, that some basic tests are run, that static analysis has been done, and that it passes some basic hygiene. I can say that, hey, pull requests for this branch require a build and the following build definition, and that build definition can then automate all of that validation. All right, so that's branch policies to help me control code into the branch. So, all right, that's good, but you kind of, testing plays an important role in ensuring quality as well. So let's take a look at a new capability that we're introducing called IntelliTest. So if you work in an organization that's been around any length of time, inevitably, there's a lot of old code. And I'll bet you've inherited some of it at some point. Some code was written a long time ago. You don't know who wrote it. You don't know anything about the code, but you've now been asked to go make some changes to it. Update it, port it to a new platform, integrate it with something, add a new feature. What are you going to do? You don't even know what the code does. So IntelliTest is a really nice feature to help you with this kind of scenario. So let's say I've got this code that I've inherited, and I can simply right-click in this method and say, run IntelliTest. What IntelliTest is going to do is go compile the code and examine it thoroughly, at sort of the bytecode level, and understand all of the branches and all of the branch conditions, and go generate the exhaustive set of inputs that generate distinct outputs, and then show them to me. So here I see this method only had one parameter, which is an employee, and the first test it generated was try null. And sure enough, that throws a null reference exception, and that's probably not what I want. Probably want to do some kind of parameter validation there. So I can go right over to the stack trace, double click on it. Sure enough, there's my use of employee without a null reference check, and I can go fix that. I see others, employees of various kinds. I see one down here that's throwing an invalid location exception. Well, let's look at that one. And as I look at that, that's a house location is location.downtown. Well, it turns out that is, in fact, an invalid location. So I want that to throw an invalid location exception. So I simply right-click on it and say allow. That is the correct result for this method. And then having done that, I can generate these tests and run them as part of my continuous integration build, and as I'm doing my refactoring and my additions to the code and improvements on the code, I can validate that I haven't changed any of the pre-existing behaviors. So really nice capability there. All right, so the next thing, another very important part of driving quality early in the process is continuous integration. I need to drive sort of build and integration and validation as part of every check-in and as close to the developer editing as I can. To do that, a build system is a very important part. And we have been working on a significant upgrade to our build system as part of TFS 2015. And so let me show you a little bit about it. Let's look at the My Shuttle continuous integration definition. And the first thing to note is in the build system pre-2015, you had to go into Visual Studio to go edit the build definition. We've now added the ability to edit the build definition in the web browser, so you can do it on any platform from anywhere without having to pull up Visual Studio. A build definition is super simple. It's just a set of tasks. And here I've got a build definition with 4 tasks: MS Build, Visual Studio Test, a machine copy, and a PowerShell script. I simply fill in the parameters for each of those tasks. I can reorder the tasks if I want to change the order things happen in. And I can add new tasks out of a catalog. Which brings me to the second interesting characteristic of our new build system, and that is it is very pluggable. And we've built a bunch of tasks for a bunch of different things. We've published the source to most of them on GitHub, and we encourage the community to contribute and help and build more tasks. So to give you some examples, for building, we've got Android support, Ant, Gradle, Gulp, Maven, Xamarin, you name it. Lots and lots of stuff. Now that's just for build. Lots of stuff you want to do in your CI pipeline. You probably want to test. So we've got the ability to run load tests, the ability to run unit tests, even the ability to farm off to the Xamarin device cloud and run tests as part of your CI build in a real device cloud. And of course, you might want to deploy your application as part of your build. Maybe you're evolving from continuous integration into continuous deployment. Again, they're just tasks that you drop into your build definition, and those get executed by the build orchestration engine. So your build definition is fairly simple. Then on top of that, there's a set of properties about the build, like where do I get the source from? You can get it out of Team Foundation version control. You can get it out of our Git implementation. You can also get it out of any third-party Git server that you want. So you can do an external Git server. You can set a trigger. Maybe it's triggered on every check-in. Maybe it's a scheduled build that runs at midnight every night. Maybe it's a manually triggered build. And lastly, in this section, another new thing about the build system is it's now audited. And that was one of the big complaints about our previous version, was people could change the build definition itself and you didn't know what changes they make. We didn't keep track of it. So now you see all the revisions. You can do a diff, very quickly see the changes that anyone has made to the build definition, get the old build definition, restore it, etc. So that's a nice move forward. So let's look at a Java build. So we've been talking about how this is a heterogeneous build system with a pluggable task system. So here I've got a Java build. I've got an Ant task to build it, another Ant task to run the unit tests, and then a publish task, which is going to drop the build results onto a drop store. And I can simply queue a new build, say OK. That build's going to kick off. And immediately it pulls up an in-browser console window, which is showing you real-time the build executing. So it's piping data from the build agent back into the console. That build agent, by the way, can be cross-platform. It can run on, of course, Windows. It can also run on Linux or iOS. So you can sort of orchestrate a build across any of your platforms and then pipe that build information directly back into your console and watch it. So that build failed. Well, that's interesting. Let's go look a bit at why it failed. It failed because some tests failed. So here I've got my test results, and I can start to drill in to my test results. We've got some test analysis that allows me to look at the various outcomes sort of sliced and diced in various dimensions. I can also drill into the individual test results and see that one specific test failed. I can double click on that, get the error message and stack trace, and from here directly create a bug, assign it to somebody, and have somebody go fix that. So a very nice integration of testing into the CI build, and then an ability to do some test analysis and farm those bugs out to people to get fixed. So the last thing I want to talk about in this section is most everything I've focused on here is sort of immediate things. These are things that you're trying to fix and catch before things get into the build. But there's another class of stuff that's often called technical debt. And that's stuff that builds up over time. Technical debt is anything that's kind of not quite right. It might be the result of changing requirements. It might have been the result of a rush to meet a deadline. It might have been a result of lack of education in the team, or just age. Code ages and it gets more complicated and accrues issues. And technical debt can be insidious. It can sap an amazing amount of the productivity of your team. So being able to track it, understand it, and work it off is incredibly important. Well, there's a very popular tool for that in the open source community called Sonar. And it's very popular in the Java community. It hasn't been so popular in the .NET community because, quite honestly, it didn't work that well for .NET. It's very good for Java, good for Node, got some Ruby support, got a lot of stuff. .NET was weak. So we've been partnering with SonarSource, who makes SonarQube, to go, for one thing, build some absolutely great .NET support for it. And we've helped them with Roslyn and helped them hook the Roslyn rules into their system, helped them write some new rules. Very happy with how that's going. And then we've also been doing integration with our build system. So the builds that I've been running are running Sonar analysis and piping that into the SonarQube. So let's just look at a few of the things in the SonarQube. So you get basic analysis of the code. How much code do you have? What type of code is it? How much is churning, etc. You get things like code complexity analysis, code duplication analysis. How much cut, copy, paste code do I have wandering around in my code? I get static analysis, so I can drill in very quickly and see all of my static analysis issues. From here, I can farm them out and assign them to people. I can also do deltas over time, so I might want to see over the last 30 days, over the last year, am I getting better or worse? So, here my static analysis issues have gone down by 17 over the last 30 days. That's good. There are policies you can apply to do things like, you know what? I got a lot of technical debt and there's no way I can work it all off right now. It's just too big a hill to climb. But I sure would like to not get any worse. So let's apply a policy that says, I'll accept the debt that I have for now and I'll gradually work it off, but I'll prevent anybody from committing new debt, new static analysis warnings, etc. So very powerful tool that's now great for .NET and getting deeply integrated with Team Foundation Server and Visual Studio Online. The last thing I want to talk about is sort of monitor and learn. So I'm deploying these applications out into the production environment. I've got lots and lots of users using them. What's happening? Is the application crashing? Is it performing well, or is it slow as not? Are the users successful? Are they finding the app? Are they getting done what they're supposed to be getting done? How do I know? These are very important questions to be able to answer to make sure you're iterating and building an app that your users love. So we have a capability called Application Insights, which I'm going to demo, that helps you with that precise problem. So let's start by looking at this MyShuttle app, and I'm going to look at the server side. So I'm looking at telemetry on my server side app. So I have here some basic look at things like server response time, browser page load time, server requests, and errors. And I see there are some errors in my app. So let's go drill in on some set of those errors. I'll pick a time range. And I'll see all of the pages that failed in that time or experienced some kind of error. I see this home/search had a problem, so I'll drill into that. And I had 4 failures, and I can see when they were. I can drill in very quickly to one of those failures to see what happened with that failure. And from here, I get details on the exception and on the request. And I can drill in on the exception, and I can get a stack trace. Well, that's cool. So now I sort of have very quickly gone, I have this app in production, and I don't know what's happening, to, hey, I'm getting this exception. Here's a stack trace. Now I need to figure out why that's happening. So I might want to sort of pivot on that and say, okay, I've now identified a specific event that I care about. Show me all of the telemetry I have for the user session that generated this exception. So it's sort of like, show me what happened up to this. So I have some idea of what the user was doing when they got the exception. So I get a list of all of that, and then I can drill into those. And I can just constantly refine and drill deeper into what's happening in my server without touching my server, right? This is stuff that happened in the past. It's not live, and I'm drilling in and getting a ton of data. So that's sort of the ability to drill in to the server side and see health on the server. There's a bunch of other stuff in Application Insights. Let's take, for example, we can look at the browser instead of the server. Not only can we instrument the server side, we can instrument the browser and see what's happening in the browser. I get a nice stack chart of performance in my browser, and I understand where I'm spending time, how much is spent in DOM rendering, how much is spent in network, etc. I can see what my average browser page load time is. I can also see JavaScript exceptions, which in this case I don't have any, so that's pretty good. Feeling good about that. So I can look at the server side, I can look at the browser side. I might also want to look at just usage. What are my users doing? So it's not just performance and reliability, but what are people actually doing? So I'll see I've got almost 20,000 users of this application with almost 85,000 sessions. That's pretty cool, and it's kind of relatively steady. I can see that the most common thing people do is search for cabs. That's cool. I can see what browsers they're using. And I see that ordering cabs, which is what I care about because I'm renting out cabs, is pretty low. So I might drill into ordering cabs to go understand what's happening with that, drill into when they happened, and continue to refine into those events. Again, pivoting by user sessions, finding out what they were doing before they ordered a cab, figure out where they exited the process, etc. We also have things like outside-in testing. So you want the ability to have sort of a global mesh of ping nodes around the world to test availability of your application. We've got that. All very cool. That's great for the server side. Let's transition and let's talk about the client. So a lot of my users, of course, renting cabs are using devices. They might be using iOS devices, Android devices, Windows Phone devices. I want to be able to understand what's happening on those as well. Well, we have that. So here I've got the telemetry on my iOS app for my shuttle. And again, I can see users. So I've got 660 users. I can see sessions and page views. I can also see crashes. I can see where they're coming from. I can see which phone they're using. I can see the list of crashes. So let's drill into one of those crashes, which I've already done. It's right here. I can see when they're happening. I can look at what version of the application is crashing, and I see, hey, what do you know? It looks like the latest version of my application, the crash count has gone way up. I can also look at crashes by device model and understand, is it specific to a device model? It doesn't look terribly specific to a device model, but it sure looks like the latest version's not doing so well. So I can drill into the latest version of my application and understand exactly what the crashes were. I get a full list of all of the crashes in that. I can pick one of those, drill into it, see exactly what the exception was, see the call stack. Then again, like I did with the server, I might want to say, what was that user doing that led up to that crash? So I can look at all of the telemetry for that user session and see all of the page views, custom events, etc., that led up to that crash, which was, of course, a very bad experience for my customer that I desperately want to fix because I want them renting more cabs from me. So it's an incredibly valuable view of your entire application. All of the components of your application, backend, web, device, all of the aspects of your application, performance, reliability, availability, usage, gives you this very nice holistic view of your application. So that's the end of my demos. And as I said, Team Foundation Server and Visual Studio Online provide kind of the set of tools that enable you to make your life easier, to deliver more, deliver faster, deliver higher quality, and make your customers happy. It was great talking to you all today. Thank you very much. I'm going to turn it back over to Soma to wrap everything up.
Just to remind you all, .NET 4.6 and Visual Studio 2015 is available for you to download right now. If you already signed up for Visual Studio Online service and are using it, a big thank you. And if you haven't already started, I would encourage you to go up to visualstudio.com and sign up for Visual Studio Online for free and get started right away, working hand in hand with Visual Studio 2015. Now, I can't sort of talk about launching a new version of Visual Studio on .NET without talking about our partner ecosystem. And the reason I say that is because I've always believed that our partner ecosystem plays a huge role in the success of Visual Studio with our customers. It's the value that we deliver in Visual Studio combined with the phenomenal amount of value that comes in through all these other products and extensions and add-ins that our ecosystem delivers. It's together we are able to deliver the most comprehensive developer tool set for you all. Today, I'm excited to say that we got 84 of our closest partners sim shipping their products, their add-ins, their extensions to Visual Studio for Visual Studio 2015. Now, if you go up to Visual Studio Gallery, you can see that we have about 6,000 different extensions there for you to be able to pick and choose and use. Just in the last 12 months, we've seen over 13 million downloads of all these extensions from the gallery. It's very easy for you to be able to build an extension to Visual Studio. It's never been this easy. If you want to think about building an extension to Visual Studio Online and our Team Foundation server, we got some new extensibility mechanisms in place whereby it is very easy for you to do that through just a consumption of a simple REST API. Or if you want to do some web UI integration to be able to integrate some new capabilities and features, you could do that as well. So extensibility is easier today than ever before. A fantastic ecosystem that's already strong, and every day that goes by, it's only getting stronger and stronger. So for each and every one of you out there who's built an extension or thinking about building an extension, thank you very much. In closing, I do want to thank you all for being here with us today to celebrate the launch of Visual Studio 2015 and .NET 4.6. I also want to take this opportunity to thank those of you who've been along with us on this journey as we built Visual Studio 2015 and .NET 4.6. Whether you've been one of those people who picked up our CTP and sort of tried it, whether you've given us feedback, whether you've sort of sent us comments through user voice, or any other way that you've participated with us along this journey, it is through the great work that you all do that we are able to deliver the fantastic products in Visual Studio on .NET that we are able to deliver today. So thank you very much. As I mentioned earlier, we got a few more interesting, exciting things for you today. First of all, the team has put together over 60 different, what I call short feature videos for you to be able to watch to get a little bit more in-depth information about the different capabilities in the product and how you can go about using them. And I would encourage you to watch them whenever you get a chance. But before you all start watching those videos, there's one other fun thing that we planned for you here. What we did was we took several members of the team and we put them in a room and said, hey, go build a real-world application. And they spent many days working through that. And we are going to share that experience with you, but more importantly, give you a chance to have an interactive conversation with those members of the team. So to help host that part of the session, I now want to hand it over to Seth Juarez. Seth, can you take it from here?
Thanks.
Thank you all.
All right. I was very excited to spend some time as a host of In the Code, where we followed a bunch of engineers around and built a real-world application called Already. Now, I know some of you are going to be disappointed that we're not building the Fabricam To-Do app Enterprise Edition version 6, update 7. But this time, we wanted to build a real app with a real purpose, and hopefully with your help, a real future. In the first segment, you're going to get to meet a little bit of the team. We're going to see a little introductory video on them, and then we're going to get the project leads up to have a live Q&A with them. We're going to follow that up by showing how we use VSO to keep us on task, how we used Visual Studio to build the web application and the mobile application, and how we used Azure throughout the process. It's pretty exciting, and we're mostly excited that we've collaborated with the Humanitarian Toolbox to make it open source. So it's actually up there on GitHub. Please collaborate with us and work on it. All right, so let's get started and have a look.